Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the jungle tier list for patch 8.14. I'm still running an RP giveaway right now as well guys with a few other YouTubers, so if you're interested in entering into the giveaway, then there is going to be a link down in the description below. So to start it off in the tier 1s for this patch is going to be a newcomer since the last time I did a jungle tier list, and it's Kindred. So Kindred over the past few patches received a lot of small nerfs, and they definitely did add up eventually. With those buffs that she got, and then with other junglers also getting nerfed over the past few patches, it meant that Kindred just became one of the strongest junglers now, and she's just a really good pick for solo queue in this patch. Kindred also does do a pretty good job at countering a lot of the meta picks right now, especially in the mid lane. The 5 or even the 6 most picked mid laners right now are all assassins in this patch, and with the Kindred ultimate, it can just do a really good job at shutting down those champions in team fights and allowing your team to survive even if the enemy team does have a fed assassin. Kindred does also have a pretty nice mid game. Once you grab your Blood Razor and your Runaan's Hurricane, the synergy between those two items is really nice, and it just allows you to deal quite a bit of damage there in mid game team fights. So second in the tier 1 for this patch is going to be Pantheon. Now Pantheon did receive buffs in 8.14, definitely pretty surprised that he received buffs, and a lot of other people are also kind of surprised because I don't think Pantheon really needed buffs. He was already in a pretty balanced spot in previous patches, and these buffs here in this patch move him up into S tier and tier 1 for this current meta. So Pantheon jungle has pretty much got almost everything that you would want for a jungler in this meta. He can level 2 gank really well. He's got some of the best level 2 ganks in the game because his W is point and click. He's also really good against a lot of the meta junglers in the early game, so he does pretty well into Graves, pretty well into Kindred, Nocturne. He can outduel most junglers in the early game due to his passive and due to his stun. If you have your passive fully stacked before you go into a duel and you block an enemy's auto attack, use your W to reactivate your passive, then you're really not going to lose out on early duels with Pantheon, and you can just do a really good job at bullying the enemy jungler and getting a lead in the early game. And then once you do successfully snowball the early game with Pantheon, you just provide so much pressure once you do hit level 6. Because of his ultimate, he's got some of the best counter ganking ability in the game, and he's got some of the best ability to just snowball a lane out of control. Even if the enemy bot lane isn't even pushed up that far, if they're like halfway pushed up into the lane, you can still gank successfully because of Pantheon's ultimate, and it does make him a very good pick for this snowballing meta. So staying in the S tier for another patch here is going to be Shaco. So Shaco, along with a lot of the other junglers in the S tier here, is a great pick for this meta because he can provide a lot of pressure in the early game. You're going to be running the Ignite with Shaco, and combined with the Electrocute, it does allow for a lot of burst damage when you are ganking in the early game. He is another jungler that does have the option to level 2 gank as well, so if you do notice that your bot lane does have good CC at level 1, then you can just look to take your red buff, go down bot lane. If you got like a Blitz or a Nautilus or a Thresh, then they can just flash onto the enemy team, and a lot of the time you're just going to be able to grab first blood. And if you can get ahead with Shaco, he's one of the best assassins that you can play in this patch because his one-shot potential is just really good. So making his way up into the S tier for this patch is going to be Nocturne. So Nocturne's another jungler that's gotten stronger over the past few patches, kind of similar to why Kindred's gotten stronger. Nocturne did receive quite a few small buffs over patches. Other junglers have been nerfed as well, so it does make him stronger. Also, with people discovering that lethal tempo is really good on Nocturne, it also made him a much stronger pick. Once you do proc your fear on Nocturne, you're going to be proccing your lethal tempo at about the same time, so when the enemy is feared, it just allows you to get so many auto attacks off with lethal tempo, and it just makes Nocturne a really good dueling jungler once he does grab the red smite. With AD carries being quite a bit weaker now, with the changes they got a few patches ago, it just means that Nocturne's ability to one-shot them and just burst them out is even better than before, and when you do grab your Duskblade and your Stormrazor on Nocturne, your one-shot combo is just absolutely insane. You can pretty much one-shot a squishy target with just your ultimate Q and maybe 1 or 2 auto attacks, so it's very easy to pull off. Once you get ahead with Nocturne in the early game, your ability to just punish the enemies for mispositioning or going into side lanes for farm is really good, and you can pretty much just solo carry games with this champion if you do get ahead early. So Graves is going to be tier 1 for yet another patch here. He's been really strong in the jungle for the past, I'd say 4 or 5 patches now. He's just a really good pick because he's not really punishable. There's not too many junglers that can actually outduel him in the early game or look to invade him and punish him because his clear is just so healthy and it's so fast in the early game. He's got great scuttle control as well, which is great for this meta. And then once you do grab your Stormrazor and your Warrior on Graves, then you can just do a ton of burst damage with that item combo. Now for the rune setup on Graves for this patch, you can either go for fleet footwork or press the attack. I do have the press the attack page up on screen here, and this is the page that more and more pro players are starting to run right now on Graves. You're going to take the domination secondary there as well, and you got the sudden impact along with the press the attack, which does give you a little bit more kill pressure in the early game. Fleet footwork is still the rune that does have the best win percent for Graves in solo queue, and it's still the rune that most people are taking, so I think it does come down to personal preference. If you like more kiting potential and survivability, then you can go fleet footwork, but if you do want a bit more kill pressure in the early game, then you can go for press the attack. And then lastly, to round out the tier 1s for this patch is going to be Udyr. So I think that Udyr has probably been the most underrated jungler in this meta for the last 3 or 4 patches now. He's just a really good pick, and every time I see Udyr in solo queue, he pretty much pops off every game, and he just provides a ton of pressure because of his strong scuttle control and because of his really good dueling potential in the early game. Now, kind of similar to Graves, Udyr does have a lot of different options in this patch for a keystone. Press the attack is still 100% viable on Udyr, and you can still run that and have great success on it. But the number 1 Udyr in NA, Willie P, he's been running Phase Rush pretty much exclusively. He's not running any press the attack anymore, and Phase Rush actually does now have a better win percent than press the attack in solo queue. So if you haven't tried out Phase Rush on Udyr, I definitely recommend it. You can still go press the attack though if that's what you're used to, and both are really good options on him. So for the tier 2 junglers in this patch, we've got Xin Zhao and Talia moving down from tier 1 into tier 2 for this patch. Talia did receive a few nerfs over the past few patches. She's also a jungler that does take quite a bit more skill than most other junglers, and I don't think that she is a tier 1 jungler anymore unless you can really play her at a good level. I still think she's a tier 2 pick though. She still is a pretty good pick for this meta if you can play her well. And then for Xin Zhao, I just think that Pantheon and Udyr are better versions of him for this patch. He still is a really good jungle pick for the meta. He still does have the potential to level 2 gank and pressure a lot in the early game, but Pantheon and Udyr can do his job just a bit better right now in this patch, so that's why I do have him in tier 2 for 8.14. And then for RekSai, she got 3 different buffs in this patch. She's also a jungler that isn't all that bad for this meta. She's a pick that can pressure a lot in the early game. She does not have the best dueling potential though compared to some of the other junglers in the first few levels, so that's why I don't have her in tier 1, but she is still one of the best early game junglers, and I think that if you can play her well, you can have a lot of success on her in this meta. So for tier 3 in this patch, these are the B tier junglers. These are junglers that aren't bad, but they're not good as well. They're just average jungle picks, and if you can play them well, you can still have success on them. Camille is a jungler that I did move from tier 1 down into tier 3 since the last time I did a jungle tier list, and she did get hit pretty hard by the nerf to her E. I think it was 2 patches ago, and she just isn't the strongest jungler anymore. She's still pretty good in the top lane, but in the jungle, if you're looking for a strong early game jungler, I do just think that Pantheon and Udyr are much better versions of Camille in this patch. And then for the tier 4 junglers in this patch, these are just going to be pretty much every jungler that just does not succeed inside of this meta. So a lot of these jungle picks here just cannot provide pressure in the early game. They get out-dueled by almost every single tier 1 jungler and out-pressured by every single tier 1 jungler. And most of these picks here are tank picks, which just aren't great for the meta because they're scaling picks, and scaling in this patch just really isn't the best thing to play, and it's just very risky and not really worth it for 8.14. So that is going to be all for this jungle tier list for patch 8.14. Hopefully you guys did find this video useful, and hopefully it does give you a pretty good idea of what picks you should be looking to prioritize for this patch. If you guys did enjoy this video, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. So thanks for watching, guys. Have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.